I want to say to the world that mommy and daddy, they are my spiritual father. I don't have any grudges against them or against the church.
Let's call a spade a spade. Enenche did not apologize, and it saddens me. What we saw was this video, and Vera was seen in that video appealing to Nigerians, social media users, netizens, to stop commentary on the issue.
No problem. Whatever people are doing, writing up on Facebook, please, I urge you people to desist from it.
Now, first, I find it sad because Vera Anyim failed to acknowledge and recognize the influence of netizens that got Pastor Paul Enenche and the Dunamis family to respond or call her or reach out to her to give us the show. She failed to realize that or acknowledge that. What I saw is her being used by the same Paul Enenche to ask people to shut up. That's what I saw. And she did what she was told to do without recognizing and appreciating what Nigerians did for her. And I find that sad. Now, was that an apology? Obviously not, because we didn't hear, whether it is Pastor Paul Enenche or the wife, we didn't hear them speak to say, we are sorry, we are wrong. Or for Pastor Paul Enenche himself to say, I am sorry, I was wrong. He didn't say that. Now, many people think that the letter that was written on the ministry's letterhead, Dunamis church letterhead, that was an apology. That was not an apology either. At best, that can best be described as an excuse, but not an apology. Because if you look at the content of that letter, what you find is the reason why Pastor Enenche was right and why Vera Anyim deserved what she got. In fact, that letter, which was not signed by Pastor Paul Enenche himself anyway, but by his PA, that letter was adding salt to injury. That was what that letter is, not an apology. So when I hear people say, and I see reports read that Pastor Paul Enenche caves under pressure, apologizes to Vera, I cringe. Because that was not an apology. It was not. It is a calculated attempt to shut Nigerians up and stop them from making commentary about this. Now, what do I gain if Pastor Paul Enenche apologizes? What is my business whether Pastor Paul Enenche apologizes or not? Will he put money in my bank account? Will he give me a new car? It wouldn't. Will he put food on my table? It wouldn't. But here is why it is important that Pastor Paul Enenche apologizes. Why it saddens me that he fails to apologize up to this point. Many people say Christianity, religion, teaches us humility. Many people believe that Pastor Paul Enenche is a very arrogant person. And arrogance is equated with pride. And you and I both know, as Christians, even the non-Muslims know, that when it comes to pride, the Bible makes it very clear that it was because of pride that Lucifer was cast out of heaven. And it was because of humility that Jesus was elevated to the status of Savior of the world. Pride goes before a fall. The Bible even says that God will give grace to the humble, but he sees the proud afar off. So if many people believe that Pastor Paul Enenche is a very arrogant man, would this not have served as a good opportunity to prove those people wrong? Or are you still thinking that Pastor Paul Enenche is not wrong? Because according to what we have seen now, either from the video that Vera did and the letter that the church wrote, we have not seen any apology. Are you saying that the excuse that was pushed in that letter holds forth, that Pastor Enenche was right based on the spoken English quality or the quality of spoken English of Vera, or the mistake she made by calling LLB BSc in law, which she corrected, by the way, because while Pastor Enenche was speaking, he said, no, LLB. She corrected it. Apparently, she was tensed. She made mistake. She was not that comfortable speaking in front of thousands of people, 80,000 if the capacity of the hall is taken into account. She's not very comfortable. I have been in situations where I had everything planned out and I get to the stage to give testimony and I completely forget everything I was saying. And it's obvious that that's what happened to Vera on that stage. Now, she corrected that, but Pastor Paul Enenche wouldn't have it. He wanted to embarrass. I could sense that he wanted to embarrass the lady thoroughly, and he just went all out and embarrassed this lady. Now, people are saying that based on the statements that the lady made, the mistakes she made, that Pastor Paul Enenche was right to reach that conclusion. Now, was he right? Pastor Paul Enenche is a pastor and a spiritual father to Vera. Not just because that's what I think, but from Vera's own statement that they are her spiritual fathers and mother. Abi? A spiritual person should understand things spiritually. Many times when statements are made, particularly when statements like that is accredited to Adeboye about how he asked God to suspend winter in Colorado, about how he had tea with God, about how he drove on an empty tank from Ore to Lagos. When those statements are made and people complain or criticize it, criticize the veracity of it, when people say it's a lie, like Pastor Paul Enenche said is a lie, the church is very quick to say that we cannot understand spiritual things with a carnal mind. The testimony of this woman is a spiritual affair because it was done in church to glorify the name of God or to give thanks back to God. I would expect that in that moment, being that they are in church, Pastor Paul Enenche will be in the spirit, and being a pastor of great repute, he will have the spirit of discernment to discern things, what is true and what is not true, in the realm of the spirit. And then this happens. So what do you tell me? What does that tell me about the spirit of discernment in Paul Enenche? Is either he failed in his spirit of discernment, or that Paul Enenche was carnal in his approach to interpreting spiritual things at that moment. If he indeed had spirit of discernment, then he would have been able to discern in the realm of the spirit that what this lady is saying is true. After all, God takes the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. We have had men of God who didn't go to school but came about doing great miracles because we're told that they were empowered by the Spirit of God, and God chose the foolish things of this world to confound the wise, so that we cannot give glory to ourselves. But here is Pastor Paul Enenche focusing on the wise things, the foolish things of this world, and calling them foolish. So at best, it saddens me to reach my own conclusion that Pastor Paul Enenche failed to display a spiritual sense of discernment, or he actually was carnal, trying to use a carnal mind to understand spiritual things. And both of these two things are not good for him as a pastor. The only remedy to all of this is that Pastor Paul Enenche must now come out and apologize, because none of what he did is close to an apology. Pastor Paul Enenche should thank his God, because I don't know how he did it. He was able to get Vera to do that video she did, and probably not to press charges. But here is where it is a narrow escape for Pastor Paul Enenche. And he should take note. And not just Pastor Paul Enenche now, all other pastors. Because we have had similar cases. A similar case in point is Bishop Oyedepo slapping a woman in church right on camera. Now that case, we had people who took it up, and I think they said it was settled out of court or something. But you see, that somebody is a pastor does not mean the person is above the law. If the person errs, the person will face the time. You do the crime, you do the time. Bishop Fei Daniels at least should tell you the whole story. Now, here's what pastors must learn. Defamation is a very serious matter. And what Pastor Paul Enenche did to Vera is serious defamation. Grave defamation. But somehow he was able to get Vera not to press charges. But here's the risk. If tomorrow somebody reaches out to Vera and offers Vera 1 billion naira to press charges against Enenche, and Vera comes back and recants and presses charges against Enenche and sues Enenche to court for defamation, or writes a petition to the police to take up the case criminally, Pastor Paul Enenche will go to jail for at least 12 months, and he will pay damages. He will pay damages because regardless of whether or not he is a pastor, he's still subject to the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that's the truth. So, it's a narrow escape for Pastor Paul Enenche this time. And he should probably take the time to reflect and see where he went wrong. Is it true what people say, that Pastor Paul Enenche is an arrogant person? Is it true? Does he realize that what he did is actually wrong? Is he penitent? Is he repentant? Is he showing it? And like Adeboye will say, because he belongs to that Christian family, has he made restitution? Because if he failed to do any of those, would actually just confirm that indeed Pastor Paul Enenche is a very arrogant man. And that is not a nice thing for a pastor to be.